How do historical anarchist societies that are not inundated by wartime situations like the Spanish Revolution handle the idea of voluntary association and open borders? Peacetime anarchist projects and intentional communities handle voluntary association and open borders by balancing unrestricted entry into geographic spaces and highly structured vetting for shared resources. Didn't I fucking say that in the beginning? Because they do not have to contend with wartime subversion. They decouple a person's right to exist in a space from their right to participate in the community's cooperative economy. Peaceful anarchist experiments ranging from 19th century intentional communities to modern autonomous regions manage this balance through distinct mechanism, separation of space versus association. In peacetime anarchist theory and practice, borders do not exist, meaning anyone can physically walk into or live near the community. However, voluntary association dictating economic participation is entirely separate. The open space, an outsider can move into any geographic area, set up their own dwelling, and live independently. The closed kitchen. The newcomer does not automatically get access to the community's shared tools, communal kitchens, or collective housing unless the community explicitly agrees to associate with them. The visitor period and trial membership. Without the rush of wartime, peacetime communities rely heavily on slow, deliberate integration. This is highly visible in long-standing, non-status communities like Twin Oaks. The visitor phase. Anyone is allowed to visit for a designated period, usually 3 to 4 weeks, to experience the community. Mutual vetting. During this time, the community evaluates if the person's behavior aligns with their pacifist or egalitarian values. The evaluation. At the end of the trial, the community uses consensus to decide if the visitor can stay permanently. If a visitor actively acts against the community's agreements, they are asked to leave the collective property. Freedom of dissociation over restriction. In a peacetime anarchist framework, if a community cannot legally or ethically force an unwanted person to leave a public geographic space, the community exercises its own right to dissociate. Rather than locking a border, members will collectively refuse to trade with, speak to, or aid the problematic individual, a practice historically known as shunning or social ostracism. Because survival is in an anarchist region relies entirely on mutual aid, being socially excluded from the voluntary network usually causes the individual to move away on their own accord. Splintering, voting with your feet. When a peacetime community faces an unresolved disagreement about a newcomer or core principle, they reject majoritarian voting altogether. Instead, they use a process called fissioning. If 60% of a community wants to allow a controversial group of newcomers in and 40% strongly objects, they do not force a vote. Instead, the community splits. The 40% will voluntarily exit the association like a fair share or communal resources and start a sister commune nearby. Oh, I like that. The peacetime anarchist open borders applies to the earth, meaning no one has the right to stop a human from walking onto a piece of land. However, voluntary association applies to the group, meaning no individual can force a community to feed, house, or work with them without mutual consent. It is an open border. It's just that they have a time to whether or not they're going to be involved in the economy. It's just like a job interview. Same thing as a job interview. It's the same thing as a job interview. If we have like a collection of tools or books or like a library, if we have a library and we need to decide who's allowed to take books, and we allow you to take books, everybody's allowed to take books. And then everyone's allowed to come in and take a book, but then after 4 weeks, if you don't bring the book back, you're not allowed to borrow any more books. That's a vetting process. Every fucking library does it. That's anarchism for you. That's anarchism. You get to borrow any book you want, as many as you want, really. I think it's like limit is 15 or something. How many books do you want to borrow? You can borrow all the books. But if you don't bring them back and you just walk in with a smile on your face, I think you have to prove where you live, right? You have to prove that you live in that county, I think. But basically anybody can walk in. In fact, I remember I moved someplace from out of state and I said, I just got here. I don't have anything. And they're like, that's okay. You could still borrow a book. I didn't even have to prove where I lived. I remember they just gave me a fucking book when I moved to Las Vegas. They just gave me books, but they limited it to like 3 instead of 20 or whatever the fuck it is. And if I don't bring it back, they don't let me borrow any books. No, you are. I am not honest. I am not. Open borders does not mean everybody gets whatever job they want. It means that everyone's allowed to is allowed to go where they want. And if you could get a job wherever you go, look, everyone's allowed to go wherever they want. And when you come in, if you want to get a job, you can get a job. But someone's going to have to vet you at some point. That's at everything you fucking do, you're getting vetted. What are you talking about? God, that's frustrating.